Hello, my name is Matthew, and a few weeks ago I read Don Quixote Part 1 with the intention of when I go on my trip to Spain, I would read Part 2 on the plane and when I land in Madrid, and all of my reading time would be Don Quixote Part 2. And I changed my mind. I'm giving myself a head start because I know I won't have that much reading time. I'm going to be spending time with my girlfriend, and we'll be visiting all the wonderful places that Madrid has to offer, along with ambling around and having no plans at all and being spontaneous and things like that. There will be reading time, but I thought I would start Don Quixote Part 2 with the intention that if I get far enough along, I can finish part two while I'm in Madrid. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if I can conclude this reading series of one of the greatest Spanish novel, one of the greatest novels written of all time, if I could make a little video concluding this work while I was in Spain. And so, in order to do that, I've given myself a head start. And I absolutely love part two. I love part one, but some of the things that happen in part two I think are so ingenious, so clever, so unexpected. And so part one ends with Don Quixote in a cage, in a cart, mad, beaten, and battered, and being dragged back to his village, to his home, after his second adventure with Sancho Panza. And part two begins with Don Quixote recovering in bed, and the the barber is there, the housemaid and the nurse is there, the priest, um, and they're trying to just have Don Quixote have a rest cure, regain his senses, recover. And in the meanwhile, uh, before Don Quixote is even fully rested and recovered and healed, up springs a novel, the history of Don Quixote, which somehow is a huge bestseller. They're running out of print runs, and everyone all over Spain, all over Europe, in part two, they're reading part one of the adventures of Don Quixote, which I think is just so funny. And this comes to Don Quixote's attention. He's shocked. Well, it all just happened. How on earth is there a full blown historical history or historical novel? And so he asks, I can't remember if he asked the barber or the priest or whoever, but he asks, what kind of stories are they telling about me? This is a knight errant, running around Spain, uh, having adventures and righting wrongs. And so he asks, what great adventures are they telling about me? Because Don Quixote's out of his mind. He believes that the whole world is full of enchantments and deceptions and illusions. So he's this great adventurer. And so uh, the bachelor, which is the one of the neighbors, uh, says Don Quixote says, "Tell me which deeds of mine are praised the most in this history." And the bachelor says, "There are different opinions, just as there are different tastes. Some prefer the adventure of the windmills, which your grace thought were um, thought were giants. Others that of the water wheel. One man favors the description of two armies that turned out to be two flocks of sheeps. The other praises the adventure of the body that was being carried to Segovia for burial. One says that the adventure of the galley slaves is superior to all the rest. Another, that none equals that of the two gigantic Benedictines and the dispute with the valiant Basque. And so, if you've read part one, which obviously the book in question that is being told to Don Quixote in part two is uh, either part one that we've just read or a version of it. And so instead of all of these great adventures that you would need to select which one has been praised first, um, Don Quixote, recovering in bed, is finding that his great history is just a series of misunderstandings and pratfalls and embarrassing, disastrous results because of his unnecessary intervention. So just this madman wreaking havoc on the countryside of Spain. And it's just such a great way of beginning the story. So now Don Quixote is determined to have another great history written about him. He's going to go back out and really show the world what sort of knight he's made of. And the housemaid and the nurse are all upset. The priest and the barber are getting up in arms. Sancho comes back. There's arguments that ensue. We have a great episode with Sancho Panza and his wife deliberating about whether or not he should go back on an adventure with Don Quixote, and if so, what are the terms, what kind of salary, what guarantees can Don Quixote make. There's a great preface to the chapter with Sancho and his wife, and in the chapter it says that this chapter might be apocryphal because of how articulate and erudite and astute Sancho is able to speak with his wife, while every other instance that Sancho speaks, he's using malapropisms, and he's confused and saying the wrong thing and coming off as ignorant and illiterate. But for some reason, he is able to speak very clearly with his wife. The nurse and the housemaid involve a neighbor, this bachelor, and say, we don't know what to do. He's going to go back off on this adventure. Sancho confronts Don Quixote and says, we need to make terms. I want to know what my salary is. How much am I going to be guaranteed? And to Sancho's surprise, Don Quixote says, nowhere in all of the history books does it say that a squire gets a salary or guarantees. He goes, if you don't want to be my squire, there's going to be a whole line of squires just waiting to be my squire. Right at that moment, the neighbor who is supposed to be helping the nurse and the housemaid stop the adventure with Don Quixote, stop the adventure that's about to begin. He, in fact, pops in and announces that he would be the squire. So Sancho is like, what? Who wants to be this guy's squire? So it gets resolved. Of course, Don Quixote and Sancho go off. Now they're on their adventure. Don Quixote's back in his armor. He has Rocinante, the great nag. Sancho has his donkey. And the first thing that they're going to do is Don Quixote finally wants to go and meet his great love, Dulcinea. And so all through part one, because every knight has to have that adoring love, that unrequited love that he just has sleepless nights and thinks about, and a woman he's never met, but he knows that she's a princess that lives in a palace, and all these things. So she lives in Tobosa, I think, Tobosa. So the first part of the adventure is Don Quixote and Sancho Panza are going to go and meet Dulcinea. And so in part one, Don Quixote sent Sancho out to send Dulcinea a letter. Well, Sancho does not, to put it mildly, does not um, complete this task. Instead, he goes back to Don Quixote and lies, saying that he did meet her. So now they're in this town. Part two, they're in this town, and Sancho just finds himself caught in this lie. Don Quixote's saying, "Well, which one's the palace? You said you were at the palace. Which palace? It's a town with no palaces." And Sancho is like trying to figure out what to do, and finally he has a moment of, we'll say, brilliance. He sees these peasant women walking down the street, and he runs up to them and treats them as if they are princesses that live in palaces, and is regarding one of the women as Dulcinea, and she's haggish and smells like garlic and not beautiful. In the book, she's not beautiful, and Don Quixote doesn't know what to make of this. Much like the very beginning of part one of Don Quixote, where he's running around having misunderstandings, having these like delusional episodes, Sancho is now using that to his advantage and lying to Don Quixote that there's enchantments going on, skewing his version of reality. So Sancho's just straight up lying to Don Quixote that these women are princesses and there are palaces, but there's an enchantment that he can't see. And Don Quixote is just like baffled by this. It's such a clever, um, conniving, a very human conniving thing for someone like Sancho to do, to save his skin. And we do start getting a few adventures that come up. One is they come across this cart, and it's a carnival cart where there's people dressed up as Satan and death and various angels, and they are these carnival figures wearing these costumes, which should be one of those red flags. Like, here we go, Don Quixote is about to go nuts with something, and they explain they're carnival folk going off somewhere else, and Don Quixote just goes, "Okay, move along." He never does this. Sancho's donkey gets stolen, and there's a whole little thing that gets resolved. But two episodes that I really want to make sure that I get to. So after this, Don Quixote comes across another knight errant, running around, righting wrongs, and it's the knight of the forest, the knight of the wood, and he's dressed up like Don Quixote. He's talking like Don Quixote. He's another knight in a world where they don't exist. They pretty much never existed except in these fictional fairy tales. But here's this person who has a squire, and Sancho and the squire go off essentially to eat and drink and talk about their masters, these knights. And Don Quixote and the knight of the forest start having this conversation, and it turns out that the knight of the forest has his own unrequited love, and he insists and demands that everyone that he runs into, every knight, every villain, after they've been vanquished, they have to admit and swear that his love is the most beautiful, ravishing, idealized woman that's ever lived. And the knight then says that he had been going around killing other knights who would not swear by this. And the ultimate pinnacle moment is when he killed Don Quixote. Don Quixote is listening to this, thinking about this whole world of enchantments, and he has this book out, this book going around in circulation that's a bestseller. Everybody's reading it, and the Knight of the Woods is saying that not only did he kill Don Quixote, but that was the ultimate test, showing that the Knight of the Wood is the greatest knight and has the most beautiful woman. Don Quixote doesn't know what to make of this. He's thinking, this must be more enchantments. he tells the knight that he's Don Quixote, and they're talking about illusion and delusional episodes and a world of enchantments, and they decide the next day that they are going to have a duel. They're going to have a battle, and whoever loses has to go off to their respective loves to say that they are the most beautiful. And so the next day, the two squires are talking. The Knight of the Woods' squire is explaining that they have to fight too. And now that it's broad daylight, the other squire, not Sancho, has this big, bulbous, long, purple nose, like a creature or a fairy tale monster. This monstrous, big, purple, gross nose. And Sancho not only doesn't want to fight anybody, he's terrified that this squire has this monstrous nose. And right before the battle, he runs over to Don Quixote and asks him to help scurry Sancho up a tree to avoid this gross little squire creature. And the Knight of the Woods takes a head start. He starts galloping towards Don Quixote. He's trying to get Sancho up a tree. The Knight of the Woods' horse falters and halts. Don Quixote gets Sancho up the tree, turns around in a moment of inspiration. Ronthanante, the typical lame, kind of slow to trot nag, is inspired and sets off, and they knock Don Quixote and Rocinante, they knock this knight right on his butt. And at this moment, there is mischief that's uncovered. As a reader, we know a little bit more of what's going on. Knight of the Woods was the bachelor, the neighbor, who told the housemaid and the nurse that he would help get Don Quixote to not go on these adventures. The nurse and the housemaid were really upset when he decided that he was in fact going to help be the squire. That didn't work out. So they come up with a new plan. That big purple gross nose was a mask, a disguise by another person. And the plan was that they were going to dress up as a knight and a squire, go off. Clearly, Don Quixote's old, skinny, and emaciated, and out of shape, already beaten and battered, not recovered, out of his mind. Clearly, they could make short work of this guy. Have a little duel, beat him, demand that he goes back to his little village and never leaves again. And he would have to abide by it because it would be the code of chivalry. But instead, Don Quixote beats this guy's butt, and they go off. Now, the Knight of the Woods, the neighbor, the bachelor, is now left with feelings of vengeance and revenge. He has his own pride to think about now. He can't just slink back to the village with his tail between his legs, describing how Don Quixote beat him up in a duel. And then the last part that I want to get to is Don Quixote, Sancho Panza, they're back on the trail, just going nowhere in particular, run into another guy, start walking together. The other guy, as Don Quixote is talking, is picking up on something that the reader and characters in the book have noticed throughout the part 1 and part 2, is that Don Quixote's mad, but he's also quite bright and can speak eloquently and persuasively depending on the topic. So it's not easy to peg him down as just a fool, just a madman. But and so you can be impressed by some of Don Quixote's knowledge and ability to speak, things like that. They're coming down the road, and there's two wagons, two carts coming down. And Don Quixote says, "Up, okay, here we go. We're going to have another adventure." The newcomer doesn't really understand because they're just going to be passing these carts, but um, everything is a means for another adventure in the mind of Don Quixote. So Don Quixote stops this little caravan, goes up to the driver, who turns out to be a lion tamer because he's carrying two cages of huge sized lions, a male and a female, and they're off to the king's palace. These are going to be the greatest lions that have ever traveled from Africa to Spain, and they're going to be on display for the king. This is described in Don Quixote. And this is one of the best episodes to really show how mad Don Quixote is. He's not just having adventures with things that are going to be relatively harmless. Things like running after windmills or running towards sheep or getting into a fist fight. Don Quixote says, "Okay, unlock and open the cages. I'm going to fight the lions." And of course, like there's this mayhem and chaos that just uproars. The lion tamer is saying, "Absolutely not." Sancho is thinking like, "Okay, here we go." The guy that they've been coming down the path with is thinking, "No, he is crazy. People are just running off in different directions. They're unharnessing horses and donkeys to get him out of the way because Don Quixote is demanding by force of punishment and violence that if he doesn't do otherwise, he'll be punished." So Don Quixote goes, "I'm gonna fight the lions," and they open up. The lion tamer opens up the cage, and thank goodness for everybody, the lion kind of sleepily comes out, looks around, licks its chops, turns around, goes back in the cage. Just a sleepy lion. Don Quixote says to the lion tamer, "Okay, go in there and kind of poke and prod him out." And thankfully, the lion tamer doesn't do it, but also very cleverly says, "You won. The lion took one look at you and admitted defeat." And at this point, this is the last thing I'll go through. At this point, the Don Quixote, who has been known as the Knight of the Sorrowful Face, he says, from now on, from this day forth, he'll be known, Don Quixote will be known as the Knight of the Lions. And then this is just so good. I want the name I have had until now, the Knight of the Sorrowful Face, to be changed, altered, turned, and transformed into this, the Knight of the Lions. And in doing so, I follow the ancient usage of knights errant, who changed their names whenever they wished or whenever it seemed appropriate. And so at this point, Don Quixote, the Knight of the Sorrowful Face, is now the Knight of the Lions. Hugely enjoyable, so fun. I'm carrying on. That puts me up to, I think, chapter 38. So those are some of my thoughts on just the beginning of Don Quixote Part 2. Don Quixote, the Knight of the Lions. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've read this. So thank you for watching. Please leave a comment if you would like. Thank you and take care.